Well, we've seen a lot of different versions of this reinforcement for the seat back, but we kind of thought we'd make ours look like a oval track race car. So we've carved this thing out of styrofoam. It weighs virtually nothing, and the biggest problem has been keeping it symmetrical and leaving enough room so that when we wanted to put on our hardware on back behind this thing, that we had enough room. We're going to use about half of this fitting right here, so there's the end of it, and that's about what we're going to need to have. Here we've got a piece of 6-ounce cloth. This is what we're going to glass over the top of this. This is admittedly considerably spiffier than our last boat, which simply had a gusset made out of plywood on the back side of it, but this boat looks pretty spiffy, so I think we're going to go ahead and try and do this. We'll see what it ends up looking like. You get a better shape with the glass on there. You can kind of tell what's going to happen. I don't think we're going to add much weight. We have our coating on this thing now. Piece of 6-inch cloth. Basically, the way that we did this was to tape off the area first so that we don't get our whole deck saturated with excess epoxy. And then we coated the area under the styrofoam and the styrofoam, shoved them together, and then coated the outside of the styrofoam, and then laid the cloth over that. What this does is to make the cloth layup very dry, so it tends to stay in place. If we overcoat and try to fill up the grain of the cloth right now, what we're going to find is it's going to do the grease pig thing and going to be all over the place. So we'll leave it dry, it'll stay right in position. And we'll see what she looks like when it's done. This task should be pretty obvious. Here we have all of the styrofoam in place between our stringers and the floor. And we would like to make sure that they are all at the same height, even though we are supposedly using a blue board that is the same height as all the stringers. We are flat boarding this thing so that when we come in here and glue our floor in, we know at least that the stringers won't be sunken down below the glue board, and we'll have a good glue bond to the stringers themselves. You can see here we've got our blank mounts in place, our seat back, and of course our little styrofoam piece behind the seat. So we're progressing pretty nicely here. We've been running back and forth between the belt sander and our sanding platform here, which has basically been this piece of carpeting, to try to get our grab rails down the outside of the boat set. We made them out of basswood. They're about a ½ inch tall. They were a little thin since we cut them out of the leftovers from our sides when we had laminated the two sides together. But if we lay two of them together, a shorter one on the inside, this one here, and then one on the outside, it gives us a pretty good thickness for this. So this will be our layup, and we're going to glue them to the side of the boat. This is a look at our two sections of our grab rails laid into place, kind of clamped into place so that you can see what's going on with the two of them. There's an inner one and an outer one. The inner one ending 4 inches behind the cockpit, and the outer one about 8 inches behind the cockpit, which is maximum as far as the class regulations go, and ending about 8 inches in front of the cockpit. And once again, a maximum. And this helps to strengthen the top edge of the boat. Obviously, we're going from box sections of this structure in the back end and in the front end to a totally open section in the cockpit area. So it's nice to have an area in the boat that's sort of a T-beam. It stiffens up the upper sides of the boat. Here we have them clamped a little more tightly together, so you can see kind of what the end result of this is going to be. And we're trying to produce a nice fair line, stiffen the boat up, and keep it looking reasonably good looking at the same time. That's kind of where we're at. We apply the goop and get her nailed in place. We have come to a relatively critical measurement here, so we flipped the boat over because this is the way someone would measure this boat, not being able to be on the inside of it. This is the measurement from the steering post, center of the steering post, to the forward hole of the plank mounting in the back end. Class rules allow us to go to 97 to, I believe, 103 inches. We are going to go 97 and a quarter, just to make sure that we're inside of that. So we take our tape measure. After we lay down a center line, a straight line, as much as possible, with straight edges down the middle of the boat, we take our tape, start at the center of the steering post, and come back here, 97 and a quarter inches, and take the best square we've got, in this case a triangle, and run it across 8 inches either side of center. That will give us 16 inches for the plank mounting holes, which is kind of standard nowadays. And here we are laying out our plank mounting hardware and taking a center punch and banging a hole in it, and then taking this little teeny drill and drilling all the way through, so that when we flip this over, we can see whether or not we are centered on the framing that we installed on the inside, just to make sure that we did this correctly. And here we can see, with our boat flipped over and the piece of hardware sitting on the inside, that our little teeny hole that we drilled on both sides is very close to centered on our mounting block in the framing. So we're in pretty good shape. Here you can see the result of our careful measuring. We are about ready to make the holes to be able to accept a nut on the other side that will attach the plank. We've been really careful about doing this. Obviously enough, these are big holes, so if you mess these up, you're going to have a big hole to fill. We started out with this kind of groovy little bit here that's a graduated bit that allows us to keep the hole centered on our marks. I don't know if you can still see the pencil mark around the outside or not, but that way we know that this thing is going to stay centered. The drill and the hole saw have got a pilot in the middle that will allow this stuff to stay on. And when we get through the bottom skin all the way, we're going to flip the boat over and finish drilling it from the inside so we don't tear anything out inside.